Hi there BookTube, it's Eleanor here, and today I wanted to make a video talking about some books about drag. It's no surprise to any of you that have watched this channel for a hot minute that over lockdown especially I have become obsessed with RuPaul's Drag Race, and I've been watching all of the back series that I haven't watched before. I've been watching the new series and the UK series, and I've watched all the All-Stars and just really soaking up everything to do with Drag Race. I've just found it a really comforting thing to watch during this time where I just feel like although Drag Race, there is a lot of reveals and people talking about all the hardships and hard things that have happened to them in their life, I feel like it's a place where drag queens and queer people come together and talk about things, and it just feels like a really safe space. And I just find it really heartwarming and great to watch. And I'm just in awe of the amazing costumes and wigs and the things that they managed to create during the show. So I've really loved that, and I wanted to filter that through to my reading. So I heard about the first book I want to talk about on someone else's channel. They'd hauled it in a book haul, and I thought that sounds brilliant. And then after that, it just sort of opened the floodgates to other books, and then reminded me of books that I had read. There is not enough fiction books about drag. I'm saying that now. There's not enough drag fiction. There's a couple in here that I'm going to talk about, but if you can recommend any more, please let me know in the comments. But the first book I wanted to mention was Legendary Children, The First Decade of RuPaul's Drag Race and the Last Century of Queer Life by Tom Fitzgerald and Lorenzo Marquez. Now this is, as it says on the tin, an exploration of queer life through the lens of RuPaul's Drag Race. What I really loved about this is the book makes some really good parallels between queer terminology and queer culture and the challenges and terminology that's used on RuPaul's Drag Race. Many things that as a non-queer person I probably didn't really have on my radar or know the history of or understand at all, and I just thought it was really a really great way to educate especially non-queer people who may not know much about the queer life experience and queer history. And I just thought it was really clever. There's things that I've watched on RuPaul's Drag Race that I say that are catchphrases, and before now I didn't really understand or know at all why they were there. And it's amazing how much of Drag Race is has a purpose. There is a meaning behind it. There's a reason. It's either connecting to a particular story or a particular person in history or a particular fight that queer people have had to have, and I love that. You know, down to the bit where RuPaul decided that they wanted to have the drag queens out of drag. I think it says at the beginning this limited, there was a number of drag queens that didn't want to take part in the show because they didn't like to have both sides of their persona. They were either drag and people knew them as the drag queen, but their separate persona as a male was totally separate. And the idea of sort of getting people to de-drag and getting the drag queens to come out of drag is sort of shedding that persona and taking them down to sort of their raw base, and it really is sort of stripping away any pretensions about who they are. And you do find in Drag Race that people go through this journey of self-discovery, and there's a lot that happens, and I think it's quite a therapeutic, cathartic show in terms of bringing to the surface certain emotions, getting people talking about things and letting things go, and I really like it for that. What I really enjoyed as well was, say for example, let's have a look, let's pick a chapter. So chapter 2 is Shady Dames in the Library. So if you've watched Drag Race, you'll know that they often say, oh, the library is open, and it's talking about being shady. So it talks to you a bit about that, the history behind that. It talks to you a little bit about Drag Race and why they use it. And then at the end, there's always history lesson. And for this one, it's history lesson, the original reality queens, and then history lesson, Dorian Corey, shady queen surviving in a shady ass world. And then there's another one, history lesson, when cross-dressers collide, RuPaul versus Milton Merle. And so you do get a lot of history and backstory, as well as some anecdotal information. And then also there's the mention of, oh, in series 8 such and such said this to such and such, and this is why they were saying that, and this is the reasons behind that, and why this is why this was funny. And it was just a joyful book to read. I really enjoyed it, and I ended up giving this 4 stars. And I think something that was mentioned in the prologue, in the beginning of this, in the introduction, was the idea that this book is like a jumping off place. So what they wanted you to do is to go down the rabbit hole, follow the threads, Google things for yourself, look things up on YouTube, watch the things that are mentioned, find out more, watch the films. And I definitely did that. I definitely veered off and was Googling, oh, who's such and such, and oh, did that really happen? And oh wow, and I didn't know about that film. So it was a really good like jumping off point, I thought, for exploring more about drag and queer culture. The next 2 books are by a judge on Drag Race. The first one I'm going to talk about is this one, which is called Name Drop by Ross Matthews. This is the second book, the later book of the 2 that I want to talk about. This one I enjoyed not as much as his other book, but this one was quite sweet. It's lots of little anecdotal stories about Ross Matthews and various different celebrities. And at the beginning of each of the chapters, he gives you a cocktail and like a little food recipe. So at the beginning of his chapter about Barbara Walters, he has an old-fashioned with extra bitters and Barbara's watermelon salad. And then it will go on to tell you a story about him and Barbara Walters, maybe the time they've met, maybe it's about something to do with him and that celebrity. And although I enjoyed it, I wasn't always that interested in the stories that were sort of coming out, and yeah, it was okay. I think what really saved it for me was that Ross read the audiobook himself, and I just think he's got a really great way of telling a story and expression, using expression, and I just love his voice. So I did enjoy this one and I gave it 3 stars. But what I enjoyed even more was his book Man Up. And this had forward by Gwyneth Paltrow, who is his best friend, and an afterward by Chelsea Handler. And this was more what I was looking for. This is more of Ross's story. How did he become Ross the intern? What was his life growing up like? What things have happened to him in his career? How did certain things come about? And that's what I really like about sort of more of a celebrity memoir. And I really enjoyed this. There were some really funny bits in there. I loved the fact that there's a fast food chain in, where is it? Oh, because I don't live in America, I don't know the name of this fast food chain. Oh, Cuckoo is this fast food chain that he really likes going to, that sounds a bit like the UK's Nando's to me. It's like a chicken place, but he loves their butternut squash. So much so that when they take it off the menu, he talks about it on his Twitter, I think, and it just creates this massive thing. And long story short, he gets the butternut squash back on the menu with his face next to it. So just some really good stories. It was really, this is what I was looking for in a Ross Matthews book, and I feel like I know him a bit better now, and I've really enjoyed it. So I gave this one 4 stars. The next book is a beautiful book. It's a much bigger book, more of a coffee table style, and the artwork in here is just bold and bright and beautiful, and I absolutely love it. It's talking about drag, and it is sort of a history lesson as well. It goes through various, oh look at this, look, this is the end papers. How beautiful is that? It goes through different eras. You've got the art of performance, which talks about the history of drag and how drag has been done for hundreds of thousands of years across different countries and places. It talks about mime, Shakespeare, the corset, kabuki theatre. It also talks about the Ottoman Empire and I think it's Kosek and Senji. It's just really fascinating, things that I didn't know about. Talks about the art of glamour, the art of war, the art of freak, the art of charisma, the art of influence, and then the future of drag. So this is one that I picked up and down over a number of weeks and just read, you know, little bits. This one says Divine and John Waters, and so it will give you a little bit of a backstory about their relationship to drag. And this is just a really great book to pick up, to read about the history and to immerse yourself in some beautiful artwork. It's done by Jake Hall, Sophie Birkin, Helen Lee and Jasiat Singh Hands, and I just think it's absolutely beautiful. So the next book I haven't got here to talk to you about because I actually gave it to Tracy to read a long time ago, but it's called Boy Queen by George Lester. This is one of the only... yeah, this is the only drag queen fiction book that I've actually read. George Lester is a booktuber, so I knew of him before, which is how I heard about his book. And it is a YA contemporary book about a young man who is desperate to go to drama school, and he doesn't get into the drama schools. He doesn't get to where he wants to go. He feels like all his friends are sort of moving on without him. He's feeling low. They take him for his, I think it was his 18th birthday, to a drag bar to watch his favourite drag queens go on stage. He is just mesmerised and in awe. And through a twist of fate and a chance meeting, he ends up becoming involved in the drag scene and becoming a drag queen. And it just follows him learning about himself, learning about being gay and what that means for him and what he wants from a relationship and what he wants from his life and his career. And it talks about safety and how unsafe it can be for gay men. And I just thought it was a really good book. I really enjoyed it, and I ended up giving that one 4 stars when I read it. The next book I want to talk about, I also haven't got on my shelf anymore. It's called Life as a Unicorn by Amrou. And Amrou is from a God-fearing Muslim background. This, by the way, is non-fiction. This is talking about Amrou's life. And Amrou really struggles with his queerness, with being gay, with being able to say that to his family, and being able to be himself. And he finds drag while at university, although there's times in his life he thinks he sort of knew that he enjoyed doing that. He'd loved dressing up in his mum's shoes, and he just thought she was the most beautiful woman. He really does sort of idolise his mum, and she is a very big part of his drag persona. And it just talks about how he came out of himself at university. He found himself, he found drag, but he also found some very destructive things that happened in his sort of learning journey. And some very dark, he had some very dark times, especially about how he felt about himself and his own self-worth. And it's really about learning how he learnt to accept himself for who he is, and sharing himself with others. So I really enjoyed that. I picked that up at Bookshop Gay is the Word in London ages ago, and I really enjoyed that when I read it, and I gave it 4 stars. Another 4-star read that I'd recommend if you're interested in drag is The Black Flamingo. This is a book written in verse, which doesn't often work for me, but I think it was such a strong story, such a strong book, that that it did work for me. It's about a mixed race gay teen boy who's trying to find himself, becoming a drag artist, and it's about his family and growing up, and again going to university, which you know, it's this moving away from home, moving away from the expectations of family. It allows a lot of gay people to really I think come out of their shells, be themselves for the first time ever. And it's kind of like you know, a lot of straight people have that during their sort of teenage years, when they're at high school or senior school in the UK. And I think a lot of gay people don't get that experience until they've left home and they feel comfortable to be themselves and to explore their sexuality. And yeah, I thought that was really good as well, so I gave that one 4 stars. So the next 3 books I want to talk about briefly are books that I want to read, so they're on my TBR. The first one is Diary of a Drag Queen by Crystal Rasmussen. Now, I didn't know when I picked this up. I knew it was a real-life non-fiction memoir of a drag queen, but what I didn't realise is that the author of this, Crystal, is actually in the same sort of drag girl group as Amrou, which is called Denim. And whereas Amrou is a very tall, model-esque, you know, beautiful drag queen, Crystal Rasmussen is equally as beautiful, but plays with the idea of gender much more, and from photos that I've seen, has a beard alongside drag. So doesn't remove all of her facial hair before, or his facial hair before he becomes Crystal. So I think this is going to be really interesting. It says he was born in the north of northern working class family, ends up in London, and it's just all about a year in his life. So it's done exactly as a diary. You know, it goes 3rd of May and then it tells you something. So I'm really excited to read this and delve a little bit more into drag culture. So there is another one. The next one is one that I found out about from Tracy, and it's not actually coming out till October, but it's Bimini Bon Boulash's book. Bimini, it was on season 2, so the latest season of UK Drag Race. I would have liked her to win, but she didn't, which was sad for me, because I felt she deserved to win. I think she was amazing, but she has written a book and it's coming out in October, so I can't wait for that one. And then the final one that I'm waiting for to come in the post is called Drag Teen by Jeffrey Self, and this says it's a YA debut from Jeffrey Self, one of the gay icons of the YouTube generation, that follows one high school student on a drag race to his future. So it's about a road trip with an insecure high school senior who has one goal: to be the first in his family to leave Florida and go to college. The problem is he has zero means for paying for school until his friends convince him to compete in a drag competition for a college scholarship. So I think that sounds really fun. I'm just waiting for that one to come in the post, and then I will be reading that and Diary of a Drag Queen. But I hope if you're interested in books about drag and queer culture, then perhaps some of these might now be on your radar, and please make sure to put in the comments down below if you can recommend me any other ones that I haven't mentioned here, because I'm always interested in reading more. Yeah, I'm just loving exploring different just exploring the history of queer culture and anything to do with drag, really. So this is that for me, and I look forward to speaking to you soon. Hope you have a good day. Bye for now, BookTube.